Wow, we're on live.
We finally got live.
Bit of technical difficulties there. I'm sorry, because I'm filling in now for Joe, who couldn't make it today. Thanks again, Rocco, for organizing all that. Welcome, guys. Vince, Peter Brown, you're on nice and early. We didn't do an intro for you because we didn't shoot on for you.
Good evening, Rash. Good evening, Vince, and good evening to our viewers. And thanks very much, Rocco, for being able to sort out those technical little issues for us.
Yes, indeed. Yes, no. Well, big welcome to you, Rash. And it's obviously a bit disconcerting to start off a show under those circumstances. But thanks very much for filling in, because our usual host, Joseph Lutzer, is unavailable this weekend and this Monday evening, unfortunately. But it's good of you to fill in, mate. We really appreciate it. And looking forward to sharing the next maybe hour and a half or thereabouts with you. And a big warm welcome to everyone who's watching. Thanks for being patient with us. We'll make it up to you. Don't worry about that. And yes, we've got a big show planned. And Brownie, we thought we'd get you on straight away without any delay whatsoever. Let's get the star of the show on. So good to see you, mate.
Yeah, good to be here, Vince. And good to see you too, Rash.
Great.
Now, Rash, you look like you're already in the spacecraft, already back to Dubai, but apparently you're going back there in the next couple of weeks. You've been summoned to do something pretty special over there.
Yeah, I have some recordings. I'm doing some work with Warner's and have some recordings.
Warner Brothers.
To be confirmed, but hopefully, and trying to make it as a short trip as possible. In case
and of course, you had an important role to play in the recent Women's World Cup soccer that was held here in Australia and New Zealand. What did you get involved in there?
I was at the FIFA World Cup. I worked with the American state teams. So we had a couple of the American state teams. So I had Virginia and California, and it was a tour manager role. It was great. Right. Got to go to the games, and we had some friendlies. We had some coaching clinics, a whole bunch of different things. So continuing on the whole FIFA stuff, which is great. So it's good.
Well, terrific that you could join us tonight and help us out. So, and it's this is the round 24 review, and this is the last one for the year in terms of reviewing the home and away season. And we've only got, 5 weeks, including next week's finals bye weekend. 5 weeks until the grand final. So you can smell spring in the air. September is almost upon us, and Carlton, for the first time in a decade, has officially made the finals series. In fact, it's ironic that they've scheduled our first final on the 8th of September, because that is the exact date that we last won a final, which was that famous one against Richmond in 2013 when Chris Judd, on his 30th birthday, kicked that inspirational goal that basically sealed the deal for us. So when we play the Sydney Swans on Friday night, that Friday night at the MCG, it'll be the 10th anniversary of that particular match. So good on the AFL for scheduling our match on the 8th of September.
It's a good omen.
And we can wish Juddy a happy 40th birthday that day.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we'll talk about the final very shortly, won't we?
We will. Yeah, can I show the socials?
Yes, Vince? By all means. We would love our viewers to get involved in the show tonight. Please let us know what you think of not only last night's game, but also the upcoming final and any other comments that you'd like to express, or opinions, or if you'd like to ask any of us a question tonight that you want us to pose, please do so. You can find us on Facebook at Blue Sunday. We'll just make that a little bit bigger for everyone, I think, Rash. I think you can make that happen, can't you?
Well,
So at Blue Sunday on Facebook, and of course on our YouTube channel, The Jumper Punch. If you go into that YouTube channel, you'll go to live shows and you'll see us there, Blue Sunday, and you can subscribe to our show as well and subscribe to the channel. So please do so. We'd love to hear from our viewers every week that we bring this to air. Sorry, Brandon, you going to say something?
And of course, we have a sponsor on the show.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Even though he's not here in person. We're of course talking about Joe's tour company or tourism business over there in Bangkok, Thailand, called Retired Working for You Tours, which you can find on the following email address: RWFU, I think it is. Is that right?
Yeah.
I've got it here.
I think we've got it up there somewhere, haven't we, Rash?
Yeah, we do. There it is.
We do. Have we got the Retired Working for
That's
You?
it.
There it is.
That's it.
www.rw4, the number 4, and then the letter U, tours. Pretty confusing email address, if you ask me, or website address. .com. So www.rw4utours.com. And if you're planning a trip to beautiful Thailand, I'm sure Joe will be able to help you out with all of the best places to go and visit and explore. So we wish Joe all the best wherever he is and whatever he's doing right now. Big shout out to him.
Very much so.
All right.
Right. Well, why don't we get into the rounds, boys?
Why don't we? Let's get into the games from the weekend just past. And Rash, we'll start off with that Friday night game where we saw the poor old Bombers. Gee whiz, haven't they crawled to the line? It was almost like the season couldn't come to an end quickly enough for them. Here's the result: 3 goals, 13-31. Only 3 goals for the entire game. How would you have liked to have taken the time to go and watch them play on Friday and see them only kick 3 goals if you're a Bomber supporter? Smashed by Collingwood, 16 goals, 5, 101, a 70-point drubbing, and that cemented Collingwood's position as the top of the ladder team for season 2023. And they're going to get a home final against Melbourne on the Thursday night of the finals.
I think that game was over at half-time. I think they all went home. Yeah.
I think Collingwood only just put the cue in the rack a little bit in the second half. I think they were already 10 goals in front at half-time, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, a comprehensive victory for the Magpies and, cementing top spot on the ladder. So the next game, Rash, was on Saturday. We had the North Melbourne Kangaroos, 20 goals, 12. 132 surprise winners, in my view. Certainly they were the underdogs going into the game. Absolutely. Over the Gold Coast Suns. This game was played in Hobart, of course, at Blundstone Arena, 14-13-97. So a really good 35-point victory by North Melbourne, and surprisingly giving up the number 1 draft pick. So who says that teams tank? They could have just thrown the game away and said, no, we'll keep our number 1 draft pick, but they didn't. They wanted to win one. They hadn't won one since round 2. So there's nothing like that winning feeling, is there? So obviously Alistair Clarkson valued the win more than he did whether they got pick 1 or pick 2 in the next draft. So anyway, the Kangaroos won and ended up getting off the bottom of the ladder. The next game was at the MCG. Maybe a surprise to a few, but Hawthorn did not get over Fremantle here. I think a lot of people thought that Hawthorn at the MCG were good things, but despite having some really good wins there against top quality opposition, this time they didn't really make it happen. 8-8-56, comprehensively beaten by the Fremantle Dockers, who finished the season on a high, 14 goals, 9, 93, a 37-point win for the Dockers. Next, Rash, was the twilight game over there at the Gabba. And I'll tell you what, even though Brisbane haven't lost one there for a long, long time, they've had a couple of near scares, haven't they? They didn't exactly fill me with a stack of confidence in the way they played this game. I think they probably should. Yeah, they should have won by a lot more, shouldn't they, Brownie?
Yeah, it wasn't
9 goals, 18-72. I mean, both teams scored 9 goals for the match. St Kilda 9 goals, 660. So they actually won by 12 behinds. And I think they probably didn't help themselves with their inaccurate kicking. They certainly will have to address that going into their first final, because inaccurate kicking can cost you the match.
Absolutely.
Next game was the big one at the Geelong home ground, GMHBA Stadium. And a big win to the Western Bulldogs. In the end, it wasn't enough to get them into the 8 because they needed us to beat GWS, but they certainly did pull away in that last quarter. They weren't exactly convincing against a depleted Geelong outfit. I mean, they didn't have Jeremy Cameron. They didn't have Tom Hawkins. They didn't have a lot of players, but Geelong put up a pretty big fight, 11 goals, 13-79, but run out of puff in the end. And the Bulldogs ran away 16 goals, 8, 104, a 25-point win, temporarily putting them into the 8. But after GWS beat us yesterday, I think they'll look back on that loss to West Coast last week as the one that's probably cost them a spot in the 8.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few more retirements out of Geelong just by the mere fact of the blooding of the young blokes in that last game. It was interesting. They had some really good quality kids look like coming through the ranks on that one.
I think they need to do more of that. It's amazing when you give the young players an opportunity how they can start to show their wares. And, I think you're right, Brownie. I think they probably showcased a lot of the up-and-coming talent that they've got in their reserves. And I think you're right. Maybe there'll be some more retirements in the next few weeks. And by the way, the fact that the Doggies have missed out on a place in the 8, I think that's going to put some tremendous pressure on Luke Beveridge in the off-season. Whether he keeps his job or not, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that we've just had the news that West Coast have decided to stick with Adam Simpson for the next couple of years. And I think that's more of a financial consideration than it is necessarily a vote of confidence in Simpson. But I would have thought Beveridge would be the same. He had a contract extension, still got 2 years to go, and I think that's probably one of the main reasons he'll probably keep his job.
Interestingly enough, there's already 3 circling around Bailey Smith tonight, so that could be interesting to see how that plays out.
Interesting indeed. And look, normally when there's player dissent and they start to look for other places to play, that probably goes to show that there's some disharmony there at the kennel at the moment. We saw Dunkley try to leave on 1 or 2 other occasions. Eventually, he got his wish and went to Brisbane. So, that's never a good sign when you've got players wanting to leave.
Yeah, Hunter to Melbourne.
Next game.
Yes, Hunter to Melbourne as well. Okay, let's get on with the next one. This was the big one over in Perth with the retirements of Luke Shuey and, of course, Shannon Hearn, their premiership-winning captain, Luke Shuey, the premiership-winning vice-captain, and Norm Smith medalist. So very much a changing of the guard there at West Coast. And, of course, Nick Natanui also announced his retirement. He didn't play, but he went onto the field and the 3 of them walked off together. Great servants of that club. And, unfortunately, they couldn't quite get the job done on Saturday night. Adelaide ended up running rampant in the second half, 17 goals, 21. Pretty inaccurate kicking in the end, 123 to West Coast, 12-6, 78, a comprehensive 45-point win. Probably should have been more, but Taylor Walker was the standout there with 9 goals and made the Coleman medal a little bit interesting, didn't he? At least got his nose in front temporarily for 24 hours, but I don't think there was any doubt that Charlie was going to get over the line. With that Coleman medal eventually going to Charlie Curnow. But, that was a big victory to Adelaide, and really they can consider themselves extremely unlucky not to be playing in the final series this year. Right. And I won't go back over that goal umpiring decision again because it's been done to death, but we've got to find a way to avoid those sorts of things happening. It's basically cost them a spot in the finals.
Yep.
All right.
And then yesterday, the 3 games that were held, the first one was at 12:30 in the afternoon here, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Port Adelaide eventually getting the better of Richmond. I don't think the scores really told the entire story for that match. I think there was a few late goals there that blew the margin out towards the finish of the game. But in the end, they did what they had to do, 13-16, 94. Kept their 3rd position on the ladder to Richmond, 8 goals, 15, 63. And be interesting to see whether Andrew McQualter ends up getting appointed as the full-time Richmond coach or whether they go for someone else. But certainly Ken Hinkley's done a marvellous job this year with Port Adelaide. They didn't finish in the finals last year. A lot of people were predicting that he'd get the sack this year, but he's really done a marvellous job with this side. They had a bit of a lull after losing to us, I think, after they'd won quite a number of games in a row. That set in a bit of rot for 4 or 5 weeks, but they seem to have come out of it now and are starting to play close to their best football. They'll be a force to be reckoned with, I think, in the finals. I wouldn't underestimate Port Adelaide. They can do some damage. So 13, 16, 94. Yeah, and Richmond 8, 15, 63. So they ended up with third position on the ladder. They certainly have had injuries like a lot of clubs, but you'd have to say that they deserve their spot in the top 4.
Okay, next game, Vince.
Next game is one that actually surprised me a little. I thought, well, when I say surprised me, it doesn't surprise me that Melbourne can play as well as this, but I didn't know that they would take this game on with nothing to gain at all and nothing to lose, because they had 4th position sewn up. They couldn't go any further up the ladder, and they couldn't drop down underneath us because they were too far ahead of us as well. But in the end, they clearly took an attitude that, don't flirt with your form, keep performing at the same high level, keep putting the opposition under pressure. You never know, we might even play Sydney at some point in the finals. Let's show them who's boss. And I thought it was a very, very professional performance by Melbourne, 11-11-77, defeating Sydney after a string of wins on their home deck at the SCG, 7-14-56. And I think that just goes to show that Melbourne is the real deal in this final series. And
the big out for them now is Melcham. They've got to try and cover Melcham. He's been really important in their forward line, and he's going to miss another opportunity to perhaps have a medal around his neck. And I agree with you, Vince. I think that sadly, if our mob at a bloody will take in the same attitude going into the game as what Melbourne did, which is they were going to go in there and still win the game regardless, you know, come what may, and Melcham now has become collateral damage in that game. So, anyway.
That's true. Yeah, look, winning is a habit, and the minute you break that habit, you start to allow some potentially some bad habits and some unsavoury tendencies to come into your game, I think, don't you? I mean, if you're fair income, you'll keep trying to win every single game, and it doesn't matter where you play, who you play, what time you play, what venue you play at. If you just keep with that same attitude, you'll end up taking that into the finals with you. And I think that's why Melbourne should be treated with a lot of caution by every other opponent. You're right. I think Melcham's loss is going to be a telling one again, because yet again it's another forward line key position player, and they lost Petty a couple of weeks back. That was a bad loss. Now they've lost Melcham. I think they're going to have to turn to Tom McDonald now. It was probably on the positive side of things. They've got Bailey Fritsch back, and he kicked 5 goals. That was an important in for them, and certainly he hasn't taken much time to get back to his best form. But that's the only question mark for me about Melbourne is, can their forward line still function despite losing those 2 players?
Well, I think Fritz, whilst he kicked 5 goals, he spent some time on the bench just nursing that injury that he did have earlier in this season. So whether he's aggravated that or not, it's remained to be seen. But anyway, that's up to them to manage.
Indeed. Did you see any of these games, Rash, or did you just see the Carlton one?
I watched a little bit of the Melbourne game. I thought, I'm happy that
it was a tough game, wasn't it? I mean, it was one of those games where both sides were trying to outdo the other defensively more than anything else, but Melbourne just suffocated Sydney as far as I could see.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Rash?
Oh, yeah, Rash? I do. I agree. They did suffocate it.
All right, now the game that you did see and I saw in person, and Brownie, I believe you watched it on the television, was our game against the GWS. And unfortunately, it was the end of our winning run. I was hoping to make it a 10 out of 10 score for the last 10 weeks, but unfortunately we fell at the final hurdle. 11-7-73. GWS clearly with a lot more to play for. It was a clear case of if they win, they're in. And if they lose, they're out. Mind you, they also had an additional thing to play for. If they were well enough in front and their percentage was increased by a couple of percent, they potentially could have had a home final, but they just fell short of that. So they have to come down here and play St Kilda at the MCG. Maybe that's not a bad thing for them if they have plans on playing at the MCG in the last Saturday in September. So maybe that's not a bad thing. But I would have thought that a home final would have given them a big advantage over St Kilda if they could have got it. Nevertheless, they did win, and they won comprehensively in the end by 32 points. And just going through the major goal kickers in the game for us, we had Charlie Curnow with 3 goals straight, Owies with 2, and singles to Cottrell, Durden, DeConning, Fisher, Hewitt, and Jack Martin, who kicked the goal with his first kick of the game, and then only had another 2 kicks after that. So we'll talk about him later. But they were our goal kickers. And GWS were headed up by Toby Green with 4 goals, 2. Riccardi kicked 3 goals in a real purple patch there. Canelio kicked 2 goals, 2. And then they had singles to Brown, Hogan, Cumming, Daniels, Keith, Lloyd, and Callum Ward. So they certainly had the better end of the scoreboard, that's for sure. So, Brownie, let's discuss the game and review it. What do you think?
Firstly, Vince.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, we should mention, yes. Obviously, in the first quarter, it didn't take long to happen. Charlie kicked 2 goals pretty quickly. In fact, the one that got him in front of Taylor Walker was a fantastic mark after a beautiful kick from Paddy Dow out of the middle, and he really launched himself at the ball and took a spectacular mark, and then went back and kicked the set shot for goal. It was a beautiful set shot, never looked like missing, and big congratulations to Charlie. That's a terrific performance. 2 consecutive Coleman medals has never been done by a Carlton player in the history of the game. So that's a first, certainly, for the Carlton Football Club.
Yeah, well deserved by Charlie. It was funny. The game was one of those games where we were very conscious of the fact that Charlie had to win the medal, so everyone was all out to try and do that. But interestingly enough, after that period of time, that's when GWS actually started to get on top, and their back line certainly come to the fore. The point I was going to make before is that clearly on the day and on the ground, Toby Green was clearly the leader of that club. The time he actually spent off and he had a blood rule, he went off and he had to get some attention for that. But as soon as he came back on, it was like the whole team lifted again. So if he makes All-Australian captain, then it's well deserved as far as I'm concerned for the effort of the year. He certainly answered his critics. I thought his discipline was outstanding, even when he was tested. Wiedering was very, very lucky to just come away with a fine on that, because other players have been rubbed out for the same sort of indiscretion. And I thought that Toby Green showed enormous leadership, and he's grown in stature in the game, in today's game. And I think that he will be a very good leader for that club for a long time to come.
He certainly led from the front yesterday. I mean, and he had a lot of mates around the ground too. I mean, he was clearly the leader, as you said, but he also had others like Callum Ward and Stephen Canelio really showing some fabulous leadership. Even young Tom Green, who's probably had more possessions than anyone in the competition, I think, this year. Yeah. And by the way, the 3 of them, Canelio, Green, and Green, both T Greens, Tom Green and Toby Green, the 3 of them made the All-Australian squad of 44 today. So that doesn't surprise me. They've been in tremendous form, and they showed us, our midfield, a clean pair of heels, I thought, yesterday. Not that our midfielders were disgraced, and it's not that they didn't get their fair share of the ball, but in terms of effectiveness, I thought that the GWS midfield is where they won the game predominantly.
I thought their disposal going inside 50 and their opportunities that they created through their midfield was exceptional. And when I was talking to you today, Vince, one of the things that I highlighted to you was the fact that we've had 3 games in the last 3 weeks, and neither of those games we've dominated through the centre corridor. Against Melbourne, against Gold Coast, and against GWS, we haven't been able to control the centre corridor. We've been forced out wide. We've been forced to kick in long. On the odd occasion that we have been able to lower our eyes, we've had some reward for it. But certainly yesterday, I thought GWS actually beat us at our own game. I thought their inside 50 tackling was tenacious, and I also thought that they created turnovers in the Carlton's disposal, which they scored from. So I mean, the realistic part of that is that their springboard was off halfback, and some of our forwards were really lazy, I thought, on occasions, not chasing their men, allowing their men to come down through the middle of the ground and be able to create things. And your point's right, Vince, about the fact that you had, guys like Callum Ward, you had Cornelio, and the other guys in the centre there.
And Josh Kelly as well. And
Kelly.
And Brent Daniels, they all, I mean, Toby Bedford, the ex-Melbourne player. There's another 3, just to name a few. I mean, they probably had half a dozen of them going through the midfield that just dominated.
Hey, guys, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, go on. One of the things that also was very interesting yesterday was that after, say, quarter time, I'll get it wrong.
Harry
Himmelberg, sorry.
Yeah.
I got tongue-tied there. He controlled the back line. He was outstanding. He just seemed to be everywhere. He controlled it really well as a general.
What were you about to say, Rash?
I was going to say, do you guys want to go through the ladder at all and the stats, or no need?
Yeah, we will in a minute. That's fine. And we'll put up some comments that we're getting from our viewers as well whenever you're ready. I assume some of those are coming through, and we're not just talking amongst the 3 of us.
We've got one right here. You can see there.
There's a hello from Joe. In Raylay Beach. Sounds like he's got his feet up somewhere on a banana lounge and being
with a little umbrella on it.
with a cocktail in his hand. But anyway, it's hello to you, Joe, from all of us.
Yeah.
We will go through that in a second, Rash. That's just, I guess, a snapshot of where we think the team won and lost the game. So yes, let's do that, Rash. I think we probably jumped ahead a little bit there. So let's go through the ladder first of all.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back to the stats on this game.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I probably jumped ahead a little bit there. I normally rely on Joe to keep us on track in this regard. So hopefully our viewers will forgive us tonight. We're a little bit all over the place. Okay, so there's the final 8. The final 8 teams that made the finals. Collingwood, as I said, on top, finishing with 72. That's 18 wins and 5 losses for the game. Clear top of the ladder, ahead of the Brisbane Lions on 17 wins, 68 points. And they were also on the same as Port Adelaide, but with a superior percentage to Port Adelaide. So the 2 teams will play each other at the Gabba in the first week. And Collingwood will end up playing 4th position Melbourne, finishing on 16 wins and 64 points. A very healthy percentage from Melbourne. I always look at the percentages because I always think that they're the teams that are more likely to be strong in the finals. They tend to have played in a superior fashion to their opposition throughout the entire season with percentages in the 120s. Carlton, 10 points short of Melbourne. So there's a clear division between the top 4 and the next 4. Carlton on 54 points, 113.3%. Half a game clear of St Kilda and the Giants, who ended up finishing on 52 points each. That's 13 wins each. 107.8 St Kilda and GWS 107.1. So only 0.7% separated those two teams in terms of who was going to get the home final. And just go back to that one. Thanks, Rash. Sydney Swans end up finishing in that all-important 8th position on 50 points. And they're the team that will be playing on the Friday night.
Interestingly enough, just in that top 8, Vince, just quickly, you've got Carlton, GWS and Swans. They were all 14th, 15th and probably 16th on the ladder in about round 4 or 5 of this year. I think
a little bit later than that because we won our first 3.5. I think you'll find around about when the bye was on, just before the bye, maybe rounds 12 or 13, we were basically bottom 4. GWS were, I know that they were only 3 wins and 7 losses after 10 rounds. And in the end, they came home like a steam train, winning 10 out of their last 13 games, GWS. When it comes to a form ladder, they'd be close to us in terms of win and loss ratio. They've certainly come home like a steam train. And the Sydney Swans too. They were also in that bottom 6 at one stage, maybe even bottom 4, but they won a string of games towards the end. So, there's 3 pretty strong teams finishing off well. And look, even St Kilda, even though they lost to Brisbane marginally on the weekend, I think they've had a pretty good 3 or 4 weeks and have certainly deserved their spot in the 8 by the end of the season. So well done to Ross Lyon in getting them to the finals.
Yeah.
Whether any of those 4 teams can trouble the top 4 remains to be seen. Then the teams that missed out, I think the Western Bulldogs, really, they stuffed it by losing to West Coast last week. But in the end, they missed out. They're the team that were the beneficiaries of us missing out last year. They snuck into the 8. This year, it's the other way around. We're in and they're out. So they finished in a clear 9th on 12 wins and 11 losses. And then Adelaide, as I said, the really unlucky team that would have made the 8 if it wasn't for that umpiring mistake. They finished on 44. Essendon limped to the line on 44. Geelong and Richmond, both with what you would have to say are disappointing seasons, only 10.5 wins out of 23 by the end of the season. Fremantle, another disappointing team, finished in the finals last year, 14th this year. So they've got a bit of looking in the mirror to do there. Gold Coast, what can we say? It's the team that never makes the finals and always looks promising but never gets there. They only had the 9 wins in the end, changed their coach or sacked their coach, went with an interim coach for the last few rounds. Now they've got Damien Hardwick, so it'll be interesting to see whether he makes a big impression there next year. Hawthorn, I think, showed some good signs at times, and then at other times they looked terrible. But a mixed bag, 7 wins for the year, 16 losses, so they've still got a lot of improving to do. And then the 2 bottom teams, North Melbourne and the Eagles, with it all to do. And probably looking to the draft to boost up their lists. So that's the final 18 teams for the home and away season.
Do you want to go through this?
We'll quickly go through the stats. We won't take up too much time on it, Rash, but as we can see there, Carlton on the left, GWS on the right. We had a few more disposals, not that many. Really, it was, 8 in the end, 390 to 382.
Yeah.
Kicks were exactly the same. Handballs, we only had 8 more than them. So, pretty much the same in terms of how much of the ball each team had. The inside 50s, they had a couple more than us. So, again, pretty even really all across the game.
Yeah.
Disposal efficiency, 73 to 72, that's pretty similar. Efficiency inside 50 is probably one area that they were better than us. And
absolutely.
And our delivery into the forward line was certainly not as good as it was in previous weeks. So that's one of the areas that there was a certain distinction between the two.
Absolutely. Yep.
Next page, Rash. Hit-outs. Well, I think DeConning had a really good game against Briggs. Now, Briggs has been touted as a really promising ruckman, and he's obviously got a lot of years ahead of him. But, geez, DeConning was impressive yesterday. What did you think of his ruck work?
DeConning's?
Brownie?
Yeah, I thought he was the better big man on the ground. I thought his work around the ground was exceptional. He certainly got his hand to the ball. Sadly, our midfielders, whilst they got a bloody caning up, I thought, he gave us every opportunity, but we didn't capitalise on it.
Yeah, and as you can see there with the other stats there, the clearances, the centre and stoppage clearances, they beat us. I mean, it was pretty even in the middle, but around the ground, they had a few more clearances around stoppages. And so despite the Connings' dominance in the ruck, they actually sharked the ball off him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better than our midfielders did.
Yep.
What was that comment there, Rash? We'll just leave them up as we come up. We'll leave them up there for at least 5 or 6 seconds so we can all read it.
Yeah, no, just seeing that.
That's Darren. Darren Thomas. I think our focus was on Charlie to get the Coleman. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, Darren. It almost gave me the impression that once Charlie got his couple of goals to secure the Coleman medal, I don't think much mattered after that. But anyway, we'll talk about that shortly. Let's keep going on the stats, Rash.
Yeah.
Next page.
Possessions.
Contested possessions. We had a few more than them. They had a bit more of the outside ball. Really, it's all pretty even, isn't it, Brownie? Yeah. Turnovers were pretty similar. Much of a muchness. I think it was just when it came to using the ball in your forward 50, that's where the main discrepancy was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep going, Rash. Next. Marks, all pretty even. Marks inside 50. Now, that's where they certainly had an advantage over us, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. They were a lot cleaner, and that was evident with the way that they had the scoring opportunities.
Toby Green, Riccardi, they took some good marks in that inside 50 area.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Continue. Tackles, they out-tackled us a little bit. Although tackles inside 50, we had a few more than they did.
That surprises me because it looked like GWS were more disciplined inside 50 than we were. That surprises me.
Well, it all comes down to what time of the game too, and what what particular plays were happening. Bouncers pretty similar. 1%ers. They had a lot more 1%ers than we did.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens when the urgency is not quite there in your playing group. And I detected that. They just were a bit short of the urgency and the intensity that they'd shown in the previous 9 weeks when it came to putting tackling pressure on. And, those 1%ers like your Smothers and Tap-ons and Shepherds and things like that, I just didn't see that happen as much yesterday as previous weeks. Did you see it that way too?
I think there was a lot of self-preservation in amongst that.
Probably not wanting to get injured. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it, Rash?
Yeah,
it is.
That's it for the stats? Okay. What did you think, mate? I'll give you an opportunity to express an opinion. What was your overall perception of that game of football?
There's a couple of comments which I agree with. I think we put the cue in the rack towards after halftime. It was obvious. So my only concern is, and I was saying to Brownie before we jumped online, is that we conceded over 100 points. So that talks to me about a system. And that to me was my major concern. And it was probably a good chance to see what the fringe players are like. So that was my overall assessment.
Which ones would you have considered to be the fringe players that you're referring to?
Fogarty, Dow, who else? Maybe Cottrell in a way. Well,
Cincotta?
Cincotta, I think he's been average the last couple of weeks too. I think it's probably a time for Boyd to come in. So
what do you think? What do you think, boys? I thought we looked unbalanced. I thought we actually the balance of the side was compromised, I think, and I think that was more to do with selection rather than players for specific roles. For example, I was very surprised to see Durden in the side. I really didn't think that he would actually be selected to play. McGovern was one that was I could take or leave. I thought maybe Boyd might have got a run before McGovern did in that back line. And some of our decision processes with some of the other players, like, for example, Fisher, Fisher found himself in really unfamiliar territory from the last 3 weeks yesterday, in so much that I think he started to panic a bit, Fisher, actually. He wasn't as clean as he was the week before. Certainly our back six, the only clear winner out of all of that was Wiedering, and I thought that his game was admirable, but the rest of them were sort of at sixes and sevens. I mean, they even sent Kemp forward at one stage, and they didn't get anything from him. And I thought that we fiddled around with it too much. The other thing that was really disconcerting was going into a finals campaign. You really need to be able to make quick decisions and good decisions when you're going forward. And I thought that we just didn't do that yesterday. Some of our decision processes were really horrible. The point I made with you, Vince, earlier today was the fact that, even if you are not playing well yourself, you've still got to stop your opponent from actually contributing on the day, even if it becomes a nullified situation of 50, nullify. But realistically, and if you look at it, and you were at the game, but the GWS midfielders, they killed us through the middle. They absolutely tore us up. Yeah, there was some reasonable performance out of Dow, but our main, what I call our main contributors, I didn't think that they performed to the expectation.
It was interesting when you look at the ratings, the points ratings that they give players after the game. Carlton didn't have one player over 100, not one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Whereas GWS had they had 4, I think. Yeah, they had 4, and in fact, that was Whitfield, Kelly, Tom Green, and Cornelio, and Toby Green. Was on 96. So, they had 5 players that were rated higher than the highest rated Carlton player.
Well, which was
DeConning on 92. So
I've said in the past, Vince, that any given game, and it's more important in a final series than it is in a home and away, but you need 13 or 14 contributors all day to actually win the game. And yesterday I was struggling to actually count 5 on a hand on my hand with Carlton. So that was really disappointing. The point that you made before is really interesting. You would rather go into a final series with a feeling of knowing that you're a winning side rather than coming off a loss.
A mindset, a winning mindset. Yeah.
And it's like the old adage, isn't it? You turn the ball over, it's cost you 6 points, but in fact, it's cost you 12 points. So because you go, the opposition side goes down and scores a goal, which means that it's cost you 12 points, not 6 points. Well, the same sort of attitude needs to be adopted when you're going into a final series. You can't go in off a loss and know full well that you're going to be confident with both the way that you're playing, whether you're healthy enough, and whether you're going to win the game. And that really didn't give me a great deal of confidence yesterday.
Can you just leave that comment up there, Rash, because it's something I wanted to ask Brownie about, because I've heard people express this since yesterday, that GWS, I should say, had everything to play for. They had to win the game to make the final, so they were certainly, motivated from that point of view. And our side had nothing really to play for. They couldn't go up further in the ladder. They couldn't drop down. It didn't matter what happened. They were going to be finishing in 5th with the home final. And that we needed the mental break, and that, it's not a bad thing. It'll keep us in check. It'll give the players the message that, hey, you're not infallible. You need to be at your best to win in the finals. And do you subscribe to any of that, or do you think that's all just making excuses for a side that's lost its way in the last 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, personally, I think that they haven't shown me anything that's really consistent in the last 3 weeks to suggest that they're going into a finals campaign with their tails up and brimming with confidence. Yesterday, I saw quite a number of our players drop their heads, and I thought, that is not acceptable going into a finals campaign. There were players that were beaten to the ball yesterday, and it was almost like they were in self-preservation mode. Players like Walsh came in underdone, Chera came in underdone. I mean, obviously, you made the point to me today, Vince, when we were discussing this, that the importance of Doherty and obviously Cripps,
my word,
in there.
From a leadership point of view, yeah.
I thought the leadership was lacking both in the forward line and actually in our midfield. As I said before, I'll tip my hat to Wiedering. I thought his leadership down in the back line was acceptable. Walsh, it was interesting. I made the comment earlier today, when Walsh came back from his first injury during the year, he came back looking like an angry man. He wanted to fight everybody, and he wasn't all that interested in being a leader of the club moving forward. And I've said this for many weeks, that I believe that he's going to be a future leader of the club. But in that sort of situation, I would suspect or I would expect someone like Walsh to actually take the leadership role and actually stamp his authority on the game. But that didn't happen yesterday, and I was a bit disappointed about that. And Chera, I'm not 100% sure whether Chera's right or not. He seemed like he was lacking a little bit of pace. Now, whether that could be the fact that he's rusty, but, as I've said on numerous occasions, I would rather take, 24 or 5 players into a final series that are actually healthy, fit and raring to have a go, rather than try and nurse players through, particularly and this is a do and die thing now. I mean, there's no second chances on this. No mistake about this. This is sudden death. So we have to actually be up and about to be able to produce the goods on any given day. And there was a few things there yesterday that didn't encourage me at all.
We just see the comment there from Joe Bruno that we had players playing for their spots. Well, this is what troubled me, is that for the amount of players that are all fighting for their literally for their survival in this team, you would have thought that yesterday provided an opportunity for them to really show their wares and to show the coaching staff that, hey, I deserve my spot in the team, and I'm going to make it really hard for you to leave me out. And yet a lot of them have now given the coaches a bit of an out to say, hey,
absolutely,
bring back Cripps, bring back Doherty, bring back Motlop, bring back whoever you like, Kennedy and Boyd and all these guys if you want, because we didn't play up to scratch yesterday.
I agree with that comment 100%, Vince. I think that,
it surprised me that they didn't put in a lot more than what they did, some of them.
Well, you have to have that competitive tension between the players, and all it's done, quite rightly what you've pointed out, is this has made it very easy for the selection committee to make some changes, because players just did not perform on the day. And some of the players that we've been relying upon, I'm talking about our back six, for example, you've got Kemp, you've got Chincotta, you've had Cottrell rotate through there, Sard, and obviously now Fisher's running off half back and stuff like that. All of a sudden now, that's put a big question mark over some of these players and their ability to be able to stand up in big games. Now, McGovern came in, and in the first probably 15 minutes of the game, I thought, shit, he's on for a pretty good game here. But then he just fell away. That first turnover that he produced with that kick inside the centre corridor, he just seemed to drop his
he turned it over.
Look, confidence.
It was amazing. I watched the first quarter again today because I distinctly remember us turning the ball over a lot. And I counted no less than 5 kicks in the first quarter that went straight to GWS players. And I know that McGovern was one of them. I think Cunningham was another one. I'm trying to remember the players that did it. But there was a number of occasions where our disposals just went straight to their players. And that bothered me. I think that showed that we weren't mentally switched on enough yesterday. And McGovern came in for Marchbank. Marchbank ended up being the sub.
Yep.
He ended up playing one quarter. I think he did pretty well too. I think he got 9 possessions. But see, there's a dilemma for the selection committee. Do you start with Marchbank or do you start with McGovern? Do you leave Marchbank out? In fact, he played his 50th game yesterday as a sub, which I thought was a bit ordinary. But anyway, I think there's a lot of question marks. This game has left more question marks in my mind, and certainly would have left some question marks in the minds of the selection committee than it provided answers.
Let's not get too carried away with the back line either. Let's also concentrate on the forward line. I thought our forward line looked really unbalanced yesterday.
Well, it was like, I think you made the point today to me, Brownie. Sorry to interrupt you, but
that's right.
You made the point to me today that last week the trigger for our side seemed to be Charlie. All of a sudden in that second quarter after the Gold Coast dominated the first quarter, it was Charlie that provided the spark. It was Charlie that kicked 4 goals and had a hand in 2 others in that second quarter, and he was the main instigator of the comeback and the reason why we won the game in the end, even dropping down to the back line in the last few minutes to save the day. Now, That didn't happen yesterday. Once he got his couple of goals in the first quarter and won his Coleman medal, it was almost like, well, that was it. I think he kicked 1 more goal for the game.
And that was a lucky one.
They were waiting for, exactly. And they were waiting for someone to provide a spark, but it never happened. And I thought you made a very good point about that today.
Well, I thought they were all standing around waiting for someone to actually do something extraordinary so that everyone could get up and about. Well, that was never going to happen against GWS. And last week when we were having our preview on the game, I did say the GWS are coming home with a wet sail. And they withstood the pressure that Carlton put on in the first quarter because Carlton started better. However, they couldn't sustain it. And if I really analysed that first quarter yesterday, some of the Carlton goals that they got were actually lucky goals rather than, something
through really good system. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
and that was for mine. That was probably a prerequisite of what was actually going to happen for the game.
Yeah. Rash, you're going to say something then, mate?
There's a couple of good comments. Joe makes a really good comment there about when Akers come off.
I think it may have spooked. Maybe spooked a few players seeing one of their colleagues go off with an injury. Do you think that seeing one of your colleagues come off in the last game of the home and away season before you're about to play a final might have made the others get a little bit tentative or not?
Well, it shouldn't. You should be in a situation where it should make other players hungry. And I know this is a terrible thing to say, and but someone's loss is someone's gain, isn't it? I mean, one door closes, another one opens. So
exactly.
That gives someone else an opportunity to bloody well show their wares. And I thought, as you rightly pointed out before, this has just made our match committee sit there and make it easy for them. This is not what going into a finals campaign is all about. Going into a finals campaign, you've got to make it hard for the selection committee. They've got to make sure that they've got to work just as hard as what the players have to actually put the right kids on the paddock so that they can do the job. And all this done is just, made it easy. Now, the point I was going to make before also, Vince, which I made with you today, question mark over Harry in the forward line is a big question. I thought yesterday he had concrete hands. I thought his attack on the ball, whilst it was admirable, he was too far out of position. He looked out of sorts. They were trying to use him as a backup ruckman, which he did a job a couple of weeks ago, which I commended. But in a centre bounce situation, he's just hasn't got the smarts as a ruckman, and he doesn't. He doesn't enthuse me at all in that position.
Do you think that there was an element of experimentation there on behalf of the selection committee, knowing that even if everything they tried yesterday didn't work, that there was going to be no real consequence to it in terms of ladder position? So do you think that they tried that and probably wouldn't have tried Harry in the second ruck if we had been fighting, for example, for a spot in the 8? Or if we had been fighting for a spot in the top 4. I wonder how much of what we saw yesterday was experimentation, like even throwing Kemp into the forward line and Harry in the second ruck and all that, leaving Pitnet out of the side. I don't know whether I would have done all that, because I think you can unsettle a team when you experiment too much with a winning formula. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of all that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because up until last week, we had Martin, for example, who was straightening the forward line up because he was offering that mid-size forward as an opportunity for scoring goals. And if he wasn't scoring goals, he was providing a contest. So then, the smaller blokes could get to work. I didn't see that yesterday at all. In fact, Martin was non-existent in the game virtually right up until he had that first kick, which was the goal. But realistically, he didn't provide any other opportunities.
He was sadly missing yesterday.
That meant that we became very predictable going into the forward line. There was the odd occasions when we lowered the eyes and we hit up Owie and I think who was the other one that scored it from? Durden, was it? That was down low.
Well, Durden got one. Yeah, Durden got one, and DeConning went forward and scored one. But yeah.
Well, all the commentary around that yesterday was the fact that we'd become so predictable going into the forward line that it made the GWS backman job so much easier. And I think that was born out of the fact that our midfielders weren't on top. And if we've got midfielders which are running through the middle and creating opportunities, what that does is that puts a lot of doubt in the backman's mind. You were at the game, Vince, so you would have seen this better than what I would have because I was watching it on telly.
TV,
yeah. What was happening was that our backmen were getting sucked up the ground again, and we were finding ourselves getting caught between the rock and the hard place again. And there was a couple of times, I don't know whether you noticed it or not, but I did, and unfortunately, I started screaming at the television. I wasn't happy. But one of the mortal sins of a backman is to make sure that you've got the square covered. And there was a couple of times where a ball dribbled through, and there was two of our guys that were probably 5 to 6 meters away from it, and all one had to be is just slightly off centre, and he would have been able to prevent something like that from occurring. Now, the golden rule is to get back and cover the square, but we just didn't seem to be doing that. If it wasn't for Wiedering intercepting, then we didn't have anybody else that was working hard enough. Now, Akers in the first half actually was working hard enough up and down the ground, and he was providing opportunity both forward and back. And when we lost him, we did actually lose a little bit of balance, and it did create a problem. McGovern's role, and interestingly enough, I'm not sure whether this is happening or not, but the weeks that McGovern's been out, our lesser backmen, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but Kemp and
lesser known ones,
lesser known ones, and even Newman for example, and Sard, these guys, Fisher, these guys. They actually took the game on and they took some responsibility. As soon as McGovern comes back in, it's almost like the whole dynamic changed and McGovern's in, so we'll just let him try and chase the ball and we'll go back to our defensive mode rather than keep on attacking.
He gives me that impression, McGovern. It's almost like when he's in the side, it's like the bully boy who says, now stay out of my way, blokes, fellas, and let me catch the ball and let me kick it out of defence. And I don't know that the others play at their best when he's in that defensive unit dominating the intercept possession as much. I just think that the others go into their shells a bit more. I'm talking about the Brody Kemps, the Chincottas and guys like that. I just don't know whether McGovern is throwing the defence out of whack a little bit when he comes in. This is why a lot of people are questioning whether we're actually playing a better brand of football since bringing back Mackay and bringing back McGovern, when we were seemingly playing a beautiful brand of football with only the one key forward in Curnow, back to the Collingwood game, for example, and the St Kilda game, and we didn't have McGovern in the side either. So I don't know. It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, what do? Do you leave McGovern and Mackay out? They're big name players on big, huge money contracts. Do we play better with them in the side, or don't we? This is the question I've got in my mind.
Well, I made the point earlier. Sorry, Rash, but I made the point some time back that most of the sides that were in the competition have got one big key forward, and the rest is a support role. Now, are we getting confused here with suggesting that Harry's supposed to be the key role, or is Charlie supposed to be the key role? And going into a finals campaign, you want that bloody well sorted out. You don't want it bloody well confused. And to me, sometimes we just look confused going forward with them both there. So,
as I said, I think a game like yesterday, produces more question marks than it does answers. And I would like to be the selection committee at the moment. They must be scratching their heads a fair bit as to what to do. I mean, they're going to end up having to decide on who's an automatic type selection and who are the possible ins versus possible outs. And there's going to be a group of players that they're going to have to look at. They're also going to have to look at the opposition and try and find matchups that work, because some players may be in reasonable form, but if they haven't got a proper matchup, they might find themselves out of the team.
Can I just
sorry,
say,
Rash?
Yeah, I just want to say my observation is that I like the mix between Marchbank and Wiedering, where Marchbank is more the lockdown, because I find McGovern, he's aggressive, which is great. So particular types of games that you need him to be aggressive and take on the game. And there's particular games where I think Wiedering is a better intercept and Marchbank is the lockdown, where I think that's, I like that combination. And the other thing I was going to mention is earlier on is that I've noticed that Sam Walsh gets caught for holding the ball a few times. Never used to happen before. So just something that
might have lost the meter in pace with that hamstring. He might not be quite as explosive off the standing start that he used to be.
We got caught a few times holding the ball yesterday.
Well, in fairness, Rash, I thought the young bloke Dow did a pretty good job. Even though he gets smashed around, now he's a light-bodied type player, and his ability to be able to attract the ball is quite interesting. The only thing that probably is, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, we have to be a bit smarter with him around the ball, particularly making contests, because there's only so much you can get smashed around before your body will not take it any longer. Our skipper is obviously not right, and they're suggesting that he's going to be okay for this week, but I can guarantee that he's going to be coming out with probably a bulletproof vest on to try and save his bloody ribs. Because you've only got to take a really hard contest. And I think one of the ones that was interesting yesterday was it Martin that came out and hip and shouldered Himmelberg and hurt him. But not unfairly, but I'm saying that it was a football collision. Yep. Correct. And a fair collision, and it only take a contest like that with Cripps, and that could have far-reaching ramifications. Look, getting back to the point of our balance, I think whilst I've been critical of Mackay, I still think that he provides a opportunity for the club. If we don't start him on the ground, then put him on the bench and start him in off the bench to give Charlie a bit of a rest, try and rotate it through there a little bit. You could use him up the ground a little bit, although yesterday his contests weren't all that flash. And on the odd occasion that he was able to take a mark, he tried to create something through the middle more than actually use his penetrating kick on his left-hand side, as Charlie was doing. And yesterday, the cohesion of those two just wasn't there. It was way off.
It got better.
Can I ask a question?
I think he got better towards the end of the game, Harry. He did. Don't you think? As the game,
well, look, he had 16 possessions in the end. I think he had 7 kicks and 9 hand passes, took 5 marks, laid 3 tackles, and got 6 hitouts as a relief ruckman. But he didn't hit the scoreboard, and I think that's where people are looking for him to have his major impact is on the scoreboard. But I'm just not sure whether it's fair criticism, because it looked to me like he was playing under instructions to get up the ground. I mean, how could he possibly have got himself so far out of position unless he was under instructions to work up the ground? He would not normally do that, Brownie. So I venture to say that he was told to stay out of Charlie's way and to work up to the 50-metre line and even beyond to try and take marks.
Bear in mind, though, we had to go down through the flanks, so he was the only one that was him and DeConning were the only ones that were providing a contest in and around that, because we weren't able to control the middle of the ground, which meant that they had to go through the flank, which means that Charlie had to hit up. Charlie, but Harry had to hit up, as well as DeConning had to try and work across to be able to provide a contest.
And they were the 2 ruckmen for the day, so they were playing ruck and sort of hit up centre half forwards,
or between centre half forward and wing.
I pose the question: if you're going to bring Pitnet back, if you come to the conclusion that ruck experiment yesterday didn't really work, and in a final we can't take that sort of a risk, we've got to play DeConning as well as Pitnet. Would you then have both Charlie and Harry as well? I mean, can it work with all four talls in the team, or are we going in with one too many, or do we have the ruckman rotating off the bench rather than resting up forward?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question you pose, but then again, I felt, and I said this today when I was talking to you, I felt that Pitnet gives us a better opportunity in centre bounce situations than DeConning, and that's no disrespect to DeConning because he is an athlete, but just in that initial contest in the middle, I thought Pitnet just straightens us up a little bit more there.
He's going to be up against Tom Hickey from Sydney, and he's a tall, rangy, left-handed jungle man-looking ruckman. Yep. Do you think that DeConning's a better matchup against him as another left-handed and left-footed ruckman of a similar build, or is Pitnet going to be the one to throw his weight around against Hickey?
I think he'd be a better matchup in the centre bounce with Pitnet against Hickey, but around the ground, DeConning will lead him because he's just he's not quick enough.
Yeah, I've just seen a comment here from Joe Bruno saying, go back and watch Harry against Hawthorn and Fremantle. He's a competitive beast. Yeah, look, he did play well against those two teams, but you do wonder about the quality of the opposition on those 2 days. We really had by far and away the better of both of those two teams, and they've ended up finishing in the bottom 5 or 6 teams on the ladder. So against the top teams who are in the finals, I wonder whether Harry will perform to the same level. But look, I guess it remains to be seen. I think they'll probably throw their support behind him, and they'll put their faith in him, and hope that Harry at centre half forward and Charlie at full forward, and maybe they can swap around a little bit, would work, and maybe DeConning and Pitnet can work in the ruck together with one sitting on the bench as the other one's rucking, and then they can rotate off the bench. But I think also the back line's got to have some questions answered. Obviously, Wiedering's a lock, but who's better down there? Is it McGovern? Is it Kemp? Is it Chincotta? Is it Marchbank? There's still some questions to be asked there.
Don't forget Newman. Newman's done the job all year there. He was virtually in all Australian form there at one stage.
I'm talking about the taller options in defence. I'm just referring to the taller ones. Obviously, Newman's been one of our best players all year there. Sard. The smaller defenders are pretty much set in stone, I would have thought. But and Doherty's got to come back.
Can I ask just one question? What I would love to hear what Brownie thinks. Why the last time we played GWS, Newman played on what's his name?
Toby Green.
Toby. And then this week we put McGovern on him. I was watching it and I thought it was quite strange. And I mean, Toby got off. So I don't. Do you think that was an experiment? Because why would you not put Newman on him, which we did a great job on him last time?
Well, Newman.
Well, he did eventually go on, didn't
he? Yeah, but I think the damage was done, wasn't it? I mean, and this is the big concern I have over McGovern. I think he's just too loose as a backman, as a tough, no nonsense backman. He's not that type of backman. He tries to be the intercept. He tries to be the attacking backman and stuff like that. That's okay, providing that you've got people playing well around you. If you don't have people playing well around you, you still need to lock it down. You still need to be able to beat your opponent. You still need to provide a one-on-one contest. And I just don't think that's capable. I don't think he's capable of doing that.
I don't know if you watched that Foxtel show on a Sunday night after all the games have been played called First Crack.
I've heard of it.
And I really enjoy watching it because they analyse most of the games with some fine-tuned detail. They showed some footage of how McGovern was loose on Green and how he allowed him to run off him, didn't chase him. Green ended up getting the ball and, they ended up scoring a goal. And that's the sort of thing that I saw a lot of yesterday. Players just not showing the same level of desperation, not the same level of intensity. And maybe it's to be expected because we didn't have really anything to gain and anything to lose out of the game. But I just, it bothers me because I would have loved them to show the same sort of attitude and mindset that what Melbourne had against Sydney, just to keep that winning feeling going, to show the supporters that, hey, we're like a well-oiled machine and nothing's going to take us off our track. But yesterday's game showed me that we just don't have that level of maturity yet.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. You sent me a text after the game to say that they were lazy and they were starting to lair-rise a bit. I think that's a fair comment from someone that was actually at the game and was there at first hand, seeing what was happening. I mean, it's different from footage obviously on the screen, but the interesting thing is the point that you're probably trying to make there, Vince, is this. Regardless of where the game is played, who it's played against, at what which game it is in the season, there's still a game of football to be won, and
of course,
and that's the objective of the game, is to win the bloody game. Now, whether that be that you've got to win it by beating your opponent, or whether that means that you've got to win it by being able to be up the ground or wherever. And we just didn't show that. That concerns me.
Just before we go into our votes, can I just ask you on the coaching side of things? We've mentioned some of the experiments that they did yesterday. Any other positional moves or coaching tactics that you took note of yesterday that you thought were worthy of mentioning? How did you? I mean, because I thought Adam Kingsley coached his side brilliantly. He kept them in touch with us, even though we had a bit of momentum there in that first quarter and could easily have run away with a big lead. They managed to keep chipping away at us and always stayed within that sort of 8 to 9 points behind, just in touch enough to keep up with us by quarter time. And then they put their foot to the floor in the second and got away a little bit. And then we came back at them just before half time, and it was fairly even at half time. But then in that third quarter, they came out like a team with a mission.
Oh, they came out and broke it open. And they broke it open purely and simply because of their rotations through the middle of the ground. And we weren't quick enough to actually respond to it. In the coaching situation, not only do you have to worry about what sort of positional moves that you're going to make yourself, but you have to have a look and see who's actually on and who's not. And, it's the responsibility of the coaching, whether it be the mids or the forwards or the backs coach, to say, hang on for a minute, Charlie's out of sorts here. Let's use him in a different role. For a 5 or 10 minute burst. And I just don't think we do that to an advantage. For example, what's to say you couldn't use Charlie rotating through the middle? 6 foot 6, 6'7" bloke rotating through the middle. I mean, we've got Cripps here. He's 6'4" for Christ's sake. So why couldn't you bloody well rotate in through there just for a short burst, just to get things moving a little bit and change things up, unsettle the opposition side. And I thought Kingsley actually did that well yesterday. He had Keefe in the middle, along with Briggs, in some of their contests, and I thought that was pretty smart move from Kingsley.
He actually put Keith on Wiedering too, which I thought was a great move by him.
What's that? Sorry, Rash?
He actually put Keith onto Wiedering also, which I thought was a great move. So he had a defensive guy on Wiedering because they knew that the strength is coming from Wiedering. I thought that was a great move. He actually
took Jesse Hogan off the ground at one stage.
Yes.
Because Wiedering clearly had the better of him. And, I think you're right, Rash. He was trying to nullify Wiedering's influence in that key defensive post. And he did to some extent, even though Wiedering was clearly our best defender all night.
And don't forget, the Swans will do exactly the same thing. They'll try and take
you can't underestimate a side.
We
cannot underestimate a side as professional as Sydney, coached by one of the best coaches in the business in John Longmire. And with all the finals experience that they've got, we cannot underestimate the opposition in our first final, that's for sure. We'll talk about that shortly.
Yeah.
Just quickly again before the votes, some of the players that I thought had below par performances, I'd be interested in your comments on them and whether you think they deserve to keep their spot or whether they are potentially victims of a poor performance. First of all, Chincotta, 2 kicks, 4 hand passes, 1 mark, 1 tackle.
Yeah, lowered his colours.
And that's probably not the first week that he's been a bit disappointing too, eh? I think he's had 2 or 3 quiet weeks.
Yeah, he has.
No, he has.
You agree too, Rash, do you?
Yeah, ready for Boyd, mate, to take his spot.
You reckon Boyd's ready to take his spot? Yeah. Martin, 1 goal, which was that was his first kick of the game in the second quarter. He had a total of 3 kicks, 4 hand passes, which is 7 possessions. 1 mark, 0 tackles.
Yeah,
as a high forward or half forward.
Yeah, profile. He's also got the profile as well, and he just didn't live up to expectations. I made the comment with you this morning, Vince, that I thought he went walkabout, which was and he just wasn't engaged, not to the extent that he had been in previous weeks. And I've said it before that he'd straightened the forward line up a bit, but yesterday he was well beaten, and he's just about due for a really good game. So I'm hoping that will be against Sydney.
Yeah, I think we always tend to say that when he has a bad one. But look, I did think that the disturbing part about his game was that it reminded me of the Jack Martin of the first half of the season where, he'll give you a little bit here and a little bit there, but then he'll go quiet for a couple of quarters in a row and hardly touch the ball. And that was like the old Jack Martin yesterday. I've really been impressed with the Jack Martin of the last half a dozen weeks or so since he came back from that injury, because I think he's gotten over that calf muscle problem. I certainly hope he has, and I certainly hope that the reason he had a quiet one yesterday wasn't because he's re-aggravated that calf muscle. Maybe he's just trying to protect it in time for the finals. I don't know, but I just didn't like Martin's game yesterday, and didn't think he gave us that much at all up forward. Marchbank came on as a substitute. He ended up getting 8 kicks, 1 hand pass, and took 4 marks in basically 1 quarter, 9 possessions.
Yeah, well worth keeping.
Yeah. Durden. Now, Durden's an interesting one. This is, of course, Corey Durden, who got an opportunity to come in because we had Jesse Motlop come out of the side through injury, I think, wasn't it? Was it through injury or illness? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he kicked 1 goal, 1. He had 5 kicks and 4 hand passes. That's 9 possessions. Didn't take a mark, but he laid a game-high 6 tackles for our club.
Yeah, look, I think he was working hard, but I think it was working hard in the wrong places. And I think he just didn't seem like he was on the pace of the game yesterday for mine.
Mind you, he's been out for quite a number of weeks, Brownie. So in fairness to him, he probably needed the run just to get the pace of the game again. He hasn't played in the seniors since probably the first half of the year.
Yeah. Point being, though, I mean, we're one game out from the finals campaign, and you can't afford to take passengers in.
So if you've got a choice between him and Motlop, which one do you go with?
On present form, I'd say Motlop I'd take in.
Okay. I think probably most people would agree with you. I'll be interested to know what our viewers think. If you think that it should be Motlop or Durden, let us know. We'll try and get a bit of a feel from our viewers as to how many votes each one gets. Owies, I think, is a small forward that really has put up his hand as probably our most prominent small forward, because one way or another he always pops up for at least a goal or two. And again, he popped up for 2 pretty good goals yesterday. 10 possessions, laid a couple of tackles in the forward 50, and he really does provide that spark, doesn't he? I mean, he's quite a passionate player, and I think the cheer squad love him, and I think the Carlton fans love him, and he's often out there providing a lot of enthusiasm for our team.
Well, he'll stay in the side anyway for the final, so yeah.
Yeah. So you think he's up to keeping his spot in the team?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, what about this one? This is an interesting one. Lockie Fogarty. Got 12 kicks, 2 hand passes. That's 14 possessions. Took 5 marks and laid 1 tackle. Is he doing enough to keep his spot in the side, or is he maybe one of those ones that's going to have to fall by the wayside to make room for Cripps and Doherty and maybe a Kennedy?
Yeah, Fogarty will go.
Maybe
Fogarty,
one of the others.
Fogarty will go. Cunningham, big question mark over. And I'm only talking from the point of view of that rotation of those small forwards. I think Fogarty and Cunningham both are under question mark.
It'll be interesting to see who, if Akers is not fit for the first final. I believe he's avoided structural damage or any bone breakage and that sort of thing, so that's great news. But Akers, as we know, went off with a collarbone injury.
Yeah.
He's been cleared of any serious damage, but he would still probably be questionable for the first final. If he's not up to starting, would you think that maybe Fogarty would save his skin there by playing on that wing, or do you think Hollands and Cottrell and others are better on the wing than what Fogarty is?
Yeah, no, I'd actually throw Cottrell onto a wing and leave, and Hollands will keep his position by default, given the fact that Akers is out if he's out injured. So I thought that Hollands' game was pretty.
Well, that was the other one I was going to ask you about. Hollands, 9 kicks, 6 hand passes, 4 tackles. 15 possessions in total for the game. I thought the GWS midfield and their wingers had by far and away the better of the centre of the ground. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree.
So you see there, we've named quite a few players that have had pretty ordinary type performances. Cottrell started like a house on fire, kicked the goal in the goal square because Charlie was smart enough to tap the ball to him. Basically kicked the first goal of the game. Had 13 possessions. 10 kicks, 3 hand passes, took 5 marks and laid a tackle. Is he doing enough to keep his position? Cottrell, do you think?
Yeah, I'd keep Cottrell in the side.
Yep. I assume Kemp down back with 16 possessions has done enough, took 6 marks?
Yeah, even though he looked like he was just a little bit hesitant yesterday. I just thought he wasn't as attacking as he has been. He was starting to show real leadership down there in terms of being able to intercept and actually be able to springboard. So that's something that was lacking yesterday.
Okay, I think that'll probably do. I think we'll get on with our 3, 2, and 1 voting. I think you're going to say something, Rash.
Yes, before that, if I may, we've got a special guest. We've got Rocco. Can we just add him to the stream? He's with the jumper punch ball.
No, we can't. Tell him to get lost.
Here we go.
Oh, look at that.
There they are.
We've got all the boys. We've got the
Oh,
Sebastiani twins there. Well, they're not twins; they're cousins actually. But
the twins.
how are you, boys?
Good. Is that Peter Brown? Who's that?
Who's that?
Who's that?
Peter I'll tell you what, Rash, if you had that promo from last year, I'd ask you to put it up, but we might have to try that next time. But
harness feeding.
Shit.
I'll tell you what, I heard your comment last week too, Paul, on the jumper punch saying we've got to get out to Melton again. I reckon we should do that soon.
We should. Absolutely, we should.
No, we're definitely going to do that.
I'll organise it for you, mate. I'll organise the VIP tickets for the members' dining room. Seeing last time you invited me up there as a special guest of SEN Radio.
Yes, I did. That was good fun that night, actually. We met. Well, Bruce McAvaney met us, not the other way around.
Yeah, Bruce McAvaney had a memorable night meeting Paul Sebastiani from SEN. And I just went along for the ride, and that was good fun. No, we will do that again, boys, and we'll have to invite a bloke who lives out Melton Way called Peter Brown. Do you know Peter Brown?
Never heard of him.
Boys, it's good to have you on the show. I'm filling in today for Joe, of course. Good to see you guys again. Tell us what's happening on the jumper punch this week.
Rocco?
Same, I suppose. It's the same merda, man. We just we just go through the game, and we do a little bit of a banana of the week and a bit of a Rocco's rant. We get stuck into a few people, and then we get
got some cheesecake here.
We got some cheesecake. We had a bit of a celebration.
Oh, now you're making us salivate. We haven't got that in our budget. Rocco hasn't got enough in the entertainment budget in the jumper punch.
There's not enough.
A little bit of grappa while we're here.
He can't even get a packet of schnuggets for us either.
If you remember, you can get 25% off at this Northlands.
At Northland.
Northlands.
Mate,
with an S on the end, Brownie, with an S on the end. Yeah. Northlands.
Yeah.
Out today. The dynamite is pulling out the dynamite there behind you. The dynamite.
The dynamite. Yeah, it is.
Nah, the dynamite can stay there for now.
It can stay there.
That's for the
Paul was ready. Paul was ready to ignite the dynamite back in round 13, but he stopped short of nuking the place in the end. But thank God we beat Gold Coast. Otherwise, I think Icon Park would have been a destruction zone.
We're only a week or two away from disaster, I'm telling you. We were. They've turned this around. We're proud of the boys.
Yeah, no, it's great news that we've made the finals for the first time in 10 years. And as I said earlier in the show, boys, they happen to have scheduled our final on the same date as exactly 10 years ago when we had that fantastic win over Richmond.
Really?
It was September the 8th. It was Chris Judd's 30th. He kicked that memorable goal there at the city end to ice the game, and we're playing Sydney on the 8th of September, 10 years later when he has his 40th birthday.
I've got one thing to say. It's no shock that as soon as Peter Brown comes onto the channel, we make finals.
Yeah.
You know what that's called? You know what that's called, boys? Finals experience. He's the only one in the whole squad with finals experience.
Exactly. We need a winners on the program.
That's what worries me about our team. We've got nobody in the team with finals experience, I think, especially if Akers doesn't play. But he might be the only one who's played in a final in our entire squad.
They don't have the scars of it.
Who knows? It's like, I know this is like not X-rated your show, but ours is a little bit R-rated. Is it X-rated, R-rated?
Either, right?
MA? Or M. It's like a virgin. You're only a virgin the first time, right? Now, finals experience, 5 minutes into the game, there'll be 22 players with final experience, and we'll take the game on. Trust me.
Okay.
You're an idiot.
Rocco's very gung ho about our chances, Brownie. So he thinks that we should just embrace the fact that we've made the finals, and the team that runs out onto the ground in just short of 2 weeks from now will be primed and ready to go, and will show Sydney what they're made of.
Before I comment, I'd like to see who's selected and who's not, and,
Okay.
and who we're taking into the game and who we're not.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, but
I think
if you think about it, there's going to be a full list there, Brownie. There's pretty much everyone will be available. Did I just
Acres.
Akers, yeah.
Akers may play. He may play.
thinking-
Yep.
Aiken.
Yeah.
Ian Aiken.
No,
No,
Aiken played in
Aiken.
87. No.
Yeah.
Akers, he'll be right. He'll be right. He was moving his shoulder apparently.
No, he's
He'll be right.
precautionary.
Wiedering got off, so he's playing, right?
Yep.
That's it. You got a
And
full list.
Cripps and Doherty will come back.
They'll
Obviously.
come back. They'll be refreshed. So you got a full list. So that's one good thing. You're going to have a full list to pick from. It's not like we have to rely on someone else. So with a full list,
Would you bring back Pitnet to ruck with De Conning? Do you think that the Harry Mackay experiment showed us that doesn't work?
we discussed that. I said I would bring back
I'd bring
Pitnet.
him back. I'd definitely bring him back.
Yeah.
I like that big physical contested type of player for this game. But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. I think that with Pitnet, as I said, they've only got one ruckman, haven't they? Really?
Hickey.
McLean can go through there.
But it'd be good to stretch him a little bit. You know, you got Pitnet. So, I'd bring him back. Naturally, the others come back guaranteed. It's just who comes out. That's going to be the dilemma, but which is a good place to be at.
I think Motlop will be primed to come back in as well. We missed his spark, I think, up in the forward line on the weekend. So
Cribs, Doherty, it's just who misses out. You know what I mean? So
we've got a comment here from Josh saying Nick Newman and George Hewitt playing against their old side. They'll be fired up.
There you go.
I'll tell you what, playing at the MCG too, I think is probably going to be a big advantage for us. I think. I was telling Rocco today that I thought the last time that I can recall us playing Sydney at the MCG was that game where Alex Silvani took Buddy Franklin apart.
100%.
So and we won the game. So I think we probably play well against them in that venue.
Plus all the crowd factor will be huge as well.
Yeah, crowd. The 19th man or whatever they call it. Yeah.
As long as we don't walk out early, we're fine.
Oh, yeah. What did you think of half the crowd taking off at three-quarter time?
We had a big say about it on the show.
Watch the show tomorrow night and you'll find out what we thought about it. But let's be honest, it wasn't the best look, was it?
No, that's the bandwagon at work, isn't it?
Yeah. Didn't like it. Anyway, that's that.
Yep.
That's that. So I'll organise that night at Melton for you and let you know when we do it.
Done.
We might make it Victoria Cup night in October.
That'll be a night. That'll be something.
Hopefully we can bring back the 2023 AFL Premiership Cup with us and show it off.
Imagine bringing the players down there.
It's true. Vince and Brownie, there are a lot of Carlton supporters in the harness racing industry.
My word.
A lot of Carlton supporters in the harness industry. A lot.
My word. Yes, Chris Alford, one of the best harness racing drivers in the country and probably one of the leading drivers again in Victoria, of course. He's a big Carlton supporter and there's a whole host of them I've gotten to know. Well, Gavin Lang's unfortunately passed away 3.5 years ago, but he was a massive Carlton fan and, there's others there too, Craig Demler, and a whole host of others. But looking forward to that. So we'll try and organise a big night out there and do another promo with Brownie near the finish line.
Maybe he can tell us. We can work out who he was.
Well, there's been. Let's be frank. Let's give him some credit. There is no more famous number 41 in the history of the Carlton Football Club than Peter Brown.
There actually isn't.
No, there isn't. But if you watch our show, mate, we pump up Brownie every week, man. We love the addition of Peter Brown on the show, man. He's
you've been fantastic,
man. And to get his insight is really. You get nowhere else. You get it nowhere else, man. To get that actual insight of someone who's been there and done that, like we can talk about it, but really we can't really get the full extent of it.
And the passion too. We love the passion as well.
And I'll tell you what, he's pretty good value for his $10,000 fee that he charges us every week to come on the show. No, let's be frank. He does it. He does it voluntarily. He doesn't charge us a cent. We really appreciate that, Brownie.
You can take the Carlton out of Brownie, but you can't.
No, you can't take the brown paper bag out of Carlton.
Take the brown paper bag out of Brownie there, mate.
The brown paper bag. We'll have to do a promo based on the brown paper bag.
The brown paper bag.
Should we bring back sauce for that or what?
Oh dear! I think we better leave it at that.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, fellas, on Blue Sunday, making a guest appearance for all of our viewers. I'm sure they've got a big treat by seeing the three of you. So, thanks for coming on, and don't forget, everyone, we'll promote it a little bit later as well. But tomorrow night, 7:00, unmissable watching the Jumper Punch with the boys.
Yep. Bit of fun on the Jumper Punch channel, and a bit of fun, and we'll get the Blues up and about.
Yep,
and we'll get the supporters up and about, because, as I said when we said it on the show, man, this is something that hasn't happened for 10 years. So everyone get right behind them and enjoy the moment, man. Enjoy the moment, because you don't know what's going to happen from minute to minute, day to day. What did actually we did that interview with Ian Aikens.
Yes.
Aiken. You said it 4 different ways now.
Yeah, we saw him near Northlands. Yeah,
we saw him in Northlands. Anyway, what did he say about when they had? We can say this, but he had just before the grand final was a Bond who went over and had a chat to him and talked about
Alan Bond.
Alan Bond,
he said,
to him and did a speech to him about. It's minute by minute. Just worry minute by minute. And that's what we should do now, man. Minute by minute, day by day, and let's enjoy it.
Yep, that's it.
Like John Rambo. How are you going to live, John? Day by day.
I don't think you got much choice. In that. All right, fellas. Well, we're about to get on with our voting. Hey, Rash, put up our votes. Let's see if the boys agreed. Let's just see if the boys agreed with these votes.
Fight a little bit.
What do we got?
Come on, Rash.
Hold on, boys. Just bear with me.
How's Rash,
You got to put the 4 squares on the left-hand side and then put up the votes on the rest of the page.
There you go.
Great stuff, Rash.
Hang on.
Here we go. Well done, Rash.
All right.
Can you expand that a little bit too?
I had the conning for 4.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the boys on the Jumper Punch vote 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but we only have the 3, 2, 1. So we've all gone for DeConning best on the ground. Brownie and I have gone for Wiedering for 2, whereas Bangkok Joe went for Wiedering for 1. And Walsh got the other votes, as well as Paddy Dow got 1 from Brownie. So is that similar to what you blokes had?
DeConning, Wiedering, Dow. No one had Dow. Down.
Stiff to miss Dow. I thought he was good.
About the same.
Our voting wouldn't be. Our voting wouldn't be interesting unless we had Brownie throwing in the odd player that out of left field that no one else has thought of. So
I think you could have been there or abouts with about 8 or 9 players on the day. There wasn't really an absolute standout.
No, DeConning and Wiedering were the 2 standouts, and then you could have raffled it for the 1 vote.
I think so.
Shelby, sit down.
I think Dow is going to be very, very important to our side moving forward. I think they've got high hopes for him, and I think that he's going to be able to hold down that in and under player within the contest in and around the ball.
Around the centre circle.
A question, Brownie. Because we had this discussion.
Yeah, we did.
About Dow. Would you keep Dow in the side?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
100%.
Well, he does. I'll tell you one area that he's been very impressive with, and that is his meters gained. I mean, even that kick that went to Charlie, that he took a big high flying mark and kicked his goal that took him to the Coleman medal. That was from Dow. That was Dow's beautiful kick right out of the centre of the ground, and he he gave Charlie every chance to mark that ball the way he delivered it into the forward line. The metres gained must be bigger than any other player in the team over the last half a dozen weeks.
Be about top 5, I'd say.
Well, he gives you that explosive burst from the contest. Not many players do for us in a team.
Yeah.
Who does?
I think one of the things that he does actually bring to our side is the fact that he's on the move in and around the contest, and if he doesn't get it himself, he's usually got a hand in it, or at least he's got his body over the ball, or something like that. And that's what I like about him. Now, I did make comment earlier on about the fact that if they're not careful, they're going to smash him around, so that he could end up with a body like Cripps has smashed around. And we did it with Judd. We've done it with a number of players over the years. Walsh is a very, very good footballer, but he's more of an outside player than he is an in and under player. And I think that Dow gives us that opportunity to have a player that's actually fighting for it and scrapping for it. There was a couple of times yesterday, one in particular, that he actually went back with the flight of the ball and took a reasonably good mark. And I thought, shit, that's just showing he's starting to play with confidence.
Maybe he needs to build up his upper body in the off season. I think if he's going to be in and under player,
in the off season he'll do that. He'll get stronger. And one of the things that he does have is that explosive 1 or 2 pace away from the contest, and that's really, really important, particularly in and around the midfield contest. And that's part of the reason as to why I was able to give him a vote yesterday, because I thought he deserved it.
All right.
By the way,
we've got a comment here that Rash has put up from a bloke called Josh, saying, ask Rocco if he's going to take down that frame on the wall of the 16 premierships he said he was going to take down last year. Who gave you that one, Rocco?
Wow. That was
the one right behind
donated. You. That was donated to us by somebody, and we're putting it up on auction now. So
for Brownie.
So we're all and it's going to go. Hey,
just give me a
second,
second,
mate. We did say we're going to take it down, but we like the. He's gone. Now he's gone, mate.
No, he's coming back. He's coming back.
We did say we were going to take it down, but we actually like the frame a lot, and we don't want to forget about the 16 premierships, but we will be replacing it with the 17th.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we want to see. We want to see it become irrelevant because we won our 17th. All right.
No,
that's exactly right.
Seeing we've got them here, Rash, and seeing Brownie's still getting his act together there, let's put up the Brownie points. And if you've got our introduction for the Brownie points, let's listen to the famous words of Peter Landy as we get to hear all about the famous Peter Brown.
All right, hold on.
Here we go. Hold your horses.
Beautiful kick from Brown. That's a
have a look how high he's off the ground.
Look at that. He was inside the centre square when he kicked that for a goal.
Have a look how high he's off the ground, Paul.
Mate, he's flying there, man. Superman status there.
The Brownie points. Here we go.
Yeah, we need to put a cape on him when he kicks that ball. All righty. So, Brownie, who's your Brownie points recipient for this week and why?
Okay. The recipient this week is none other than...
Put it up, Rash, by the way.
I was just waiting for him to give it, to say it, but that's okay. It's there.
Adam
Sardi.
Now,
all right.
I've been critical in the past of Adam's disposal, but yesterday I thought he provided some really good opportunity moving forward. I thought in and amongst his possessions, he also had contested possessions, which were, and it's been a part of his game which I've been critical of. He's been pretty loose, but yesterday I thought he at least contributed and to a contest. And he not only did he have the contested possessions, but he also was able to get some inside 50, some involvements. So it's not just being able to clear the ball out of a danger zone. It was more trying to use it moving forward. So yesterday, and you're right, Rocco and Vince, you could have thrown a blanket over a dozen blokes yesterday, but for mine, I thought Sardi was really good. He actually went off the ground at one stage injured.
Yeah, he got a bit of an ankle injury. Yeah, rolled the ankle.
He got that early too, didn't he?
Second quarter.
He got that in the second quarter, and he played out the whole game. So that shows something.
Yeah, so I thought his work rate yesterday was admirable, and he certainly wasn't disgraced.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the brownie points recipient for this week.
We love the Wolf, mate. Yep. We love the Wolf.
Love the Ramadan warrior.
And we can thank the boys from the Jumper Punch for getting the Wolf back to Carlton supporters, and they've got their voice back. In every time Sardi kicks the ball, it's an unmistakable sound of Wolf every time he kicks it, and he's done us proud by kicking the ball long on quite a number of occasions, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has actually. He's actually provided an opportunity to create something further up the ground. And yesterday, when you were talking about Harry hitting up in and around where that between centre half forward and centre, that's where he was able to get the ball to a contest. Yeah. So as I said, recipient of it yesterday.
Perfect.
All righty, let's preview quickly our finals match that's going to take
place. All right, guys, what
on...
we're going to do is we're going to finish off what we're doing here.
Okay.
We'll let you go. You do your show, gents.
Yeah, we'll let you do your show.
We're not stealing your
Well, I didn't know. I didn't want to kick you off. I mean, we're more than happy to have you on.
We'll kick ourselves out. Yeah.
Okay, no problems.
All right, good to see you,
thanks
boys.
for joining us.
Thanks,
guys. Yeah, see you soon.
No worries. All right, that was the boys from the Jumper Punch. Don't forget to watch them tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for another 3.5 hours, no doubt, of fun and frivolity every Tuesday night. So that'll be well worth watching. All right, let's move on to the preview of the finals game, Rash. And, of course, we are playing the Sydney Swans in an elimination final Friday the 8th of September at the MCG. The first bounce is at 7:50 p.m. Should be a great game, Brownie. How do you see it panning out? And of course, we don't know what the composition of the teams are yet. But in essence, how do you see the game being played? And what do you think we need to be mindful of as we take on the Sydney Swans at the MCG?
Okay, well, Sydney do have finals experience, whereas Carlton does not. That's the first point I'd like to make. Second point is that this is do or die. There's no second chances on this, so. We've got to bring our A game, not our B game or our C game. We've got to bring our A game because Sydney's the type of side that will actually lock it down and lock it down hard, and they're going to make you scrap and fight for every possession that you can get through the game. I think this game's going to be won and lost through the midfield, and I think our boys coming back, particularly Cripps and Doherty, are going to have a pretty big leadership role to play in being able to contribute to the opportunity for our guys to be able to play through the centre of the ground. Now, that's one part that I identified earlier tonight is the fact that our mid domination or our corridor domination has been non-existent. So we now really have to take this. Now, Sydney, they're able to lock it down there because the ground is round and it's got wide flanks, and through the middle is a short way home. The MCG is a different proposition, so we're going to be able to perhaps spread, and that is something we need to use as a weapon. Now, if they are going to play Mackay, then I would play him a little bit further up, given at the MCG, and giving him some space to move into. And I think it's really important that we keep our forward line open. I think our back line will be able to match it with the forwards at Sydney. But I think our midfield is the area where we really have to be able to control the game. Interestingly enough, one of the players for Sydney, Blakey, who's an attacking backman, if we were in the situation where he was starting to play a little bit of havoc, then what I would do is I'd nullify him by throwing someone on him just to shut him down and take him out of the game, because he provides a lot of run and springboard work from the back line, and we're going to have to be mindful of that, particularly on the MCG. And I think that by doing that, it will allow us to control. Now, Sydney's going to have a little bit of a problem probably matching up on our forwards, to be honest with you. I think they're, now that McCartan's really only their key backman back there. I know they've got Rampy and these guys that are usually back there, but I think McCartan's going to be the key to that, and he'll probably get Charlie, which means that will probably free up someone like Martin and he's due to have a day out. So I'm hoping to see big things from Martin. And if Harry's playing up there, then I would suggest that he will provide an opportunity up the ground for them to be able to take advantage of that.
Yes, well, last time they played, it was Sydney winning by 26 points at the SCG. That was in late May, earlier this year, in round 11. So I think it was pretty tight for most of that game. They pretty much had small leads at every change, but then they kicked 3 goals to nothing in the last quarter and ran away with it by 26 points. So we're going to have to turn that around. And I agree with you. The inclusions are going to be very important for us, and being as close to full strength as possible is going to hold us in good stead. I do think we can win, and I do think we will win, but it's not going to be easy. But I do think the fact that it's a home final for us makes a huge difference. If we were playing up in Sydney, it'd be a lot bigger task.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. Everything comes into it up there. The crowd comes into it. The ground itself, they know how to play the ground really well up there. I mean, and don't forget also, there's an important point here. Sydney were the losing grand finalists last year against Geelong. So they've got a hell of a lot to bloody prove. They've got to show that they're capable of being able to bounce back from their humiliation last year. And Carlton's got to be on their game to make sure that Sydney don't have that ascendancy and are able to dominate the game. So I think this is really going to be a test, not only of our personnel that's on the ground at any given time, but it's also going to be a test of our coaching staff. I think they're going to be tested on this day, because you've got Sydney who are coached well, and their disciplines are really, really strong, particularly in tight situations. So they're going to have to be able to nullify that by having our coaching staff be proactive and be able to be aggressive with some of their moves.
Yeah, well, I went through some of the players that played well against us in that match back in May, and you have a look at it, and the highest rated player on the ground was Lloyd that night. He had 35 possessions. Blakey, who's just got into the All-Australian squad. Hayward, Chad Warner, number 1. He's a dangerous player. Goulden, he's another one that made the All-Australian squad. Rowbottom, Heaney, he's a very dangerous forward, and they'll be relying on him a lot more now that Buddy Franklin's retired. Cunningham, Fox, and of course their captain Luke Parker. So they've got a lot of good players, especially their best half a dozen, to a dozen players. They're very dangerous if they're let loose. So we're going to have a lot to overcome that night. So Rash, you're wanting to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've almost gone 2 hours, so we're going to have to start.
Yeah, we'll try and wrap it up. Yep.
But I have a question for you guys. Ed Curnow, does he play his last game? Possibly. Just out of curiosity. Does he get
I don't think there's any room for that in finals, to be honest. If they were going to give him a send-off, yesterday's game would have been the perfect game to do it, because there was no consequences for us. Well, the fact that they didn't do that,
they'll probably get him as a tagging role on what's his name, Goulden. I mean, he's pretty good. So
well, they could. I mean, but gee whiz, I don't know. Would you really? I mean, he hasn't even come into the conversation in this last 2 hours, Ed Curnow, and in terms of players that could come back into the team. He is one. You're right, but geez, I don't know whether I'd be bringing back Ed Curnow. I really don't.
Right.
I think that'll be a gamble.
All right,
No
boys.
sentiment.
Let's move on
No
to
sentiment in football.
next one is
So-
what I. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, by the way, we'll preview this game along with the other three finals in greater detail next Sunday night at 7:30, back in our usual time slot. So the tipping leaderboard, Joe, who's kept tipping the same team as Brownie every week so that he stays one in front, has successfully taken it out 14-13. And, I brought up the rear with 10. So well done, Joe. You've won the tipping competition for the home and away.
Interesting little statistic there too. I tipped 13, but that just happened to be the amount of games that we won this year.
That's true, yes. Yeah, I'm not sure that you tipped every time we won. I think you tipped sometimes when we lost. But anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so that ended up being the end of that competition. Not that there's any prizes to be won. So there we go. The road to the Cup. The interesting thing about this from a Carlton perspective is that if we happen to beat Sydney, we will then be playing the loser of Collingwood and Melbourne. Now, if we happen to get over that team, whoever the loser of that clash is, we will then have to go to either the Gabba to play Brisbane in a prelim final, or we'll be going to Adelaide to play Port Adelaide in a prelim final. So whichever way you look at it, and it doesn't matter who we play in the second week, if we win it, we will be going into state in week 3. It's either going to be Brisbane or it's going to be Adelaide. Probably Brisbane. That's certainly the way most people think that game will go, but you never know in finals. Yeah. So week 3 will be an interstate final, and then if we happen to win that game, well, then, of course, we're in the grand final. So as you said, Brownie, there's no room for mistakes and there's no room for losses. Once you lose one, you're out. So let's hope that we can go deep into the finals. It'd be good to at least get one win, that's for sure.
All righty.
Now, we've got the Omen Bet of the Week. Rash, last week, we went very close again to winning. But I was smart this time because I went a little bit for the win and a fair bit each way. A fair bit for the place. So State of Heaven, number 2 in race 8, actually came second. Paid $1.80 for the place. I think I had $5 for the win and $20 for the place. $20 for the place at $1.80 gives us back $36 for our $25 investment. So we made $11. Is that right? $11 profit, that is.
Yep.
Okay.
So now what do we got for this week? Kilmore Harness tomorrow, Tuesday the 29th of August, which happens to be my birthday.
Happy birthday, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I'll be 50 tomorrow.
Oh,
fantastic.
Plus GST. But don't mention the GST, okay? All right, I'm 55. So I thought we'd do an Omen Bet on my birthday at Kilmore Harness, race 5, number 1. Let's put all $11 on for the place. I don't think it'll win, but I think it'll be very good for the place. So number 1, Destiny Stride, to be trained and driven by David Miles. He's not a bad trainer and driver. So I think from the pole position, he'll have a very good chance to finish in the top 3. So I'm going to back him for the place. So let's actually, what I'll do is I'll put $1 on for the win, Rash. What do you think? We'll just have a little bit on for the win.
Yeah, why not?
$1 for the win and $10 for the place. There you go.
All right, done.
All right. So we'll see how that turns out this time next week. There's your Omen Bet for the week. And there's the little accounting exercise. So we had $61. So we improved our bank balance from 50 to 61. And now we're going to bet that $11 on this horse next week. What was it again? Just go back one screen. I chose something. I've always got to try and choose something with a name that relates back to Carlton. Okay, Destiny Stride. So let's hope that the next match is one big giant stride to our destiny as premiers for 2023. Let's hope.
Destiny's in their hands.
Destiny is in their own hands. Let's hope they take that big stride in 2 Fridays from now.
Perfect.
Okay, so don't forget, everyone, if you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Jumper Punch, and on our Facebook page, Blue Sunday. And we welcome your comments, your feedback, good or bad. We don't mind. We'll take everything on board. Well, before we head off, can I just first of all thank Rash very, very much for filling in for Joe this week. You've done a tremendous job, Rash.
Yeah,
Even
well
though we had
done,
a
Rash.
slight hiccup at the start there, we couldn't find the live button or something like that. I'm sure our viewers will forgive us for any little hiccups that we had along the way.
For your information, we're not sure how we're going to exit either because we have to get Rocco back.
We're not sure how we're going to exit. You don't know how to get off.
No, because there's no live button. So I'm going to have to get Rocco to take us offline. That's weird.
Is that right? Okay. Well, forgive us if we all just leave the screen, and you might have a blank screen there for a minute or two until Rocco takes us off air. Can't you press the nuke button? Can you press the nuke button?
The nuke button? No.
Yeah, it's like that big red button, the one with the big sound that comes on when you press it, like, or it might be something like whoop whoop whoop.
Can I just say it's been a pleasure? Seriously, I always love filling in. Joe does a great job, but good to see you again, Brownie.
Yeah, good to see you, Rash.
And go Blues from me.
Yeah, well done, Rash. Great job filling in. Vince, happy birthday for tomorrow. And to our viewers, thanks for staying with us tonight. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. And Rash, I believe you're going back to Dubai in a couple of weeks for your big mission down there with someone famous. So, as we know you as DJ Rash, you did a wonderful job at the Women's World Cup. So, all the best for your trip back to Dubai, and hopefully you can come back in time for the grand final when Carlton plays Collingwood.
Hopefully.
See you guys.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. All right.
So, Rash, are you going to give us the closing one? No. Okay. Bye, everyone. Cheers.